Welcome to the Behind the Connection podcast, the podcast that covers all things internet and technology related, the good, the bad, the complexities, and the realities. We talk about it all right here on Behind the Connection. I'm Tyler Rasmussen, and I'll be your host today. We have had some exciting news in the last couple weeks here in the Uintah Basin as we had the Deputy Undersecretary of the USDA here to visit STRATA and make a wonderful announcement about a $23.6 million grant loan to build fiber in the Uintah Basin to 3,000 remote locations. So on today's podcast, we want to get together with a couple of our guests and discuss a few of the details about that announcement, answer a few questions that have came up from the announcement, and get into a little bit more detail. So with me today in studio, I've got Jon Bingham. He's engineering supervisor from STRATA Networks, and I've got Dusty Olsen, the owner-operator of Big Run Ranches. I want to welcome them both here today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
They look like they're having a great time. I want to give them both just a moment to introduce themselves, and we'll dive into the topic just a little bit. Johnny, do you want to go first?
Sure. Jon Bingham. I've born and raised here in the Uintah Basin. Left for a few years for schooling and everything, and was very happy to make it back. I've been with STRATA for about 12 years. My wife and family, we live here in the Uintah Basin, and we're loving it here.
Great. Thank you. Dusty.
Yeah, Dusty Olsen here. I was also born and raised here. I left for just a short period of time, but moved home and married Carol here from the Basin. We have a family of 5, and we enjoy living here and plan to live here the rest of our lives.
And we didn't plan it this way, but we have a couple of Neola's finest sons here, right?
Well, I don't know.
We'll claim that we're from Neola.
Yeah, I'm sure Neola will claim you too, and they would be proud to have you for sure. We didn't plan it that way, but that's the way it worked out. So we're really glad to have them. Yeah, so glad to have these two both here, and we hope that we can take this opportunity to get a little bit more detail about what this ReConnect, this USDA ReConnect program announcement means to internet customers here in the Uintah Basin and customers of STRATA Networks. So, Jon, in your role and capacity, maybe talk a little bit about how you've been involved with this program, this process.
Well, it definitely is a process. The USDA made these funds available, made an announcement, I guess a little over a year ago, that they were going to open up this program with the goal of expanding broadband out in these rural areas. With that comes a lot of the rules and regulations to distribute the funds the way that they should be. STRATA got involved and worked through the process. It's a lengthy process. It's a very competitive process. Different phone companies and groups throughout the country have all applied for it. And so the applications were due last summer. We got the application in, and we're very happy to finally get it announced just a week ago. So
maybe talk briefly. How big is this fund? What's the specific purpose of the fund?
So this is called the ReConnect Fund, and there are $600 million set aside that were allocated to this program, which is pretty big. And that program was divided up into 3 different categories. People could apply for a grant loan, or a loan. STRATA applied for the grant loan, 50-50, and it's a big deal for us.
So $23.6 million of a $600 million annual fund. That's a fairly sizable chunk that's coming right here to the Uintah Basin, right?
You're absolutely right. To actually get that large of a portion of the pie right here in the Uintah Basin, it's a big deal.
So a team of yourself and 3 or 4 other individuals from STRATA worked on the application. How long did it take to complete the application, get it submitted? Did you feel all along that it was kind of a shoo-in that we would get the funds? Maybe talk about that process just a little bit.
We speculated a lot, whether we had a good chance or not. Definitely didn't want to get our hopes too high, but we worked hard as though everything counted on it, and we it took us a couple of months. It was a big process. The I guess to give a little explanation of what the program is and how you qualify for the funding. In order for an area to qualify for this funding, it has to be an area that cannot get 10 megabits a second of internet.
Can you put that into terms that, I mean, most consumers hear the speeds that we reference, but they may not necessarily know exactly what that means. Like, can you quantify that in terms of like the number of Netflix streams that they could simultaneously stream or something of that nature?
Yeah, it'll vary. You'll get away streaming a Netflix video, basic online searching, 9 megs of internet, just the basic internet needs can kind of be met with that speed. Nothing beyond that.
Right. Yeah, and then when you get into a situation where you have multiple devices and 2 or 3 different devices trying to do the same thing at the same time, typically 9 megabits per second is not going to suffice, right? As you've indicated, it'll handle basic broadband functions, internet functions, but it's just not going to help you have a great internet experience.
You're
correct?
exactly right. You'll be frustrated a lot with less than 10 megs. You're going to be frustrated a lot, especially if you have a few kids in the home that have their devices. The devices are regularly trying to do upgrades and upgrade softwares, and they're wanting to stream on their devices. And like I said, you meet some basic needs with those speeds, but you're going to be frustrated.
So if we can pause that thought for just a minute, you were talking about the locations that could qualify for the grant loan, this ReConnect program, but let's maybe back up, and from a consumer's perspective, let's ask ourselves, why do those locations even exist to begin with? Like, why are there locations in the Uintah Basin that under a federal program meet a definition of insufficient broadband speeds? Can you talk about, from your engineering perspective, you're the one that's seeing the STRATA Networks plant as a whole. Why do some of those locations exist? What are some of the difficulties of providing better broadband speeds in the Uintah Basin?
Well, we are putting broadband on cable that was originally intended for phone lines. And these phone lines over traditional copper lines have been distributed throughout the Uintah Basin. And by the way, they were funded through USDA many years ago. Much of them were. And now as technology advances, we are now trying to get internet over those same copper lines. And basically, the longer you go, the further distance internet travels over a copper line, the more that the signal drops off. And so, which really impacts a rural area where these lines were perfectly good for regular phone lines. Now we're trying to do this whole new technology, and it works to a degree, but it's got its limitations, especially the distance issue.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? I think Strata service territory is about 8,000 square miles, and about 2 customers per square mile is what we end up looking at from. So we're definitely in a very rural part of the country that both federal and state regulatory bodies, the FCC and the Public Service Commission, deem as a high-cost area to provide services. Correct?
That's exactly right. It is very expensive to get these lines, whether they were copper or fiber. To build this infrastructure is extremely expensive.
Okay. So before we dive back into the piece about which locations qualified, let me ask a question again. So is Strata just kind of sitting back waiting for federal programs to pay to build these networks to locations in the basin, or is Strata proactively building networks with their own,
I would say Strata has been very proactive. We've been building fiber optic networks for a long time. And maybe, yes, we've been building fiber to the home. We have over 8,000 locations with fiber to the home or the business. But we've also been getting fiber out to, we call it fiber to the node. Basically, we run a fiber line further out into the network, and we put a node out there. And what that does is it shortens the distance that the internet is traveling over the copper lines. So we've done beyond fiber to the home. We've done a lot of fiber to the node in order to, get that internet out closer to the customers.
Okay, so we use the term fiber a lot. What does that really mean for customers? What are the benefits of fiber? Why do I care if you bring fiber to my location or not?
Well, there's some basic technical reasons. It's a superior technology. Over a copper line, you're sending an electronic signal. Anytime you've got electricity, you've got different challenges. You can get influence from other power sources. I mean, a power line running close by, or even an irrigation pump turning on and sending out influence can affect a copper line, as well as obviously corrosion, water infiltrating into the lines. There's some management issues that our crews have to deal with. With fiber optics, you're sending a light signal down the cable. You don't get the power influence. You have a very quiet, solid technology that really has no limitations today. You know, it meets and exceeds our needs today as far as technology. We can send different light waves that maximizes and multiplies the amount of capacity that a line can hold. I'm trying to just not get too technical, but over one fiber line, which is about the diameter of a human hair, you can send many gigs of internet speeds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's wonderful, and we're going to come back to like how fiber is beneficial to an end user like Dusty Olsen at Big Run Ranches. We're going to come back to that, but really, broadband and the most advanced broadband in the world delivered over fiber optics is necessary for all things: education, healthcare, business, economic diversity, all of those things, correct? That sometimes we take for granted because we have the connection at nearly, all of the Uintah Basin schools, for instance. But we'll come back in a minute and we'll ask, Dusty, we'll have him weigh in on how his family's using internet and how his usage patterns or habits might change with the availability of fiber. So let's jump back to your original explanation. You were talking about areas that you identified to apply for. They had to be under 10 megabits per second. Why don't you continue down that path just a little bit, Johnny?
Okay. So I'll explain the process that we went through. First of all, we went through the entire network, the STRATA's network, which includes Uintah, Duchesne counties, and the eastern Wasatch County, and mapped the areas that meet that criteria that cannot get 10 meg. It was pretty extensive, quite a few of these areas, these outlying areas, and once we established all of the mapping that identified those areas, we then had to prioritize and choose because our needs exceeded what we were going to be getting for this funding, basically. And so we had to go through a process of prioritization, decide which areas to focus on. Once we were able to do that, we worked through the application and applied for the areas that we could.
So are these areas basin-wide? Where are they all located? How can a customer go look and see if they happen to be in one of those areas? Yeah,
and I can't say this enough. Go to stratanetworks.com/ReConnect. There's a good landing page that has the map of the areas that were awarded. There's some basic information about the program. And so we can say that definitely stratanetworks.com/ReConnect to go to that landing page, and you can see where these areas are. Okay.
So some common questions we've gotten since the announcement took place is, it looks like I'm right outside of the area. Why I don't get more than 10 megabits per second now? Why was I excluded from this program? And you alluded to that a little bit, but maybe emphasize again why some locations are right on the edge and maybe they weren't included in this particular round of funding.
Okay. If you today cannot get 10 megs and you don't find yourself in one of these ReConnect areas, that is because of some of the process that we went through, as well as other things. One of the reasons is the application criteria. We actually had points that your application jumped up because of certain criteria. So as we went through these different areas, we had to target where we could get more points. We got points for more farms, more businesses. We've got points for rurality, meaning the less homes per square mile. So taking all of that into consideration, we were shooting for the best application we could and still get the funding. So that's where we're at.
So it's probably important to note to the listener that there is a round 2 going on right now, right? The application window is open. An additional $600 million is available, correct?
Exactly.
And I assume Strata will be applying?
We are right now in the thick of it. We're spending a lot of hours right now on ReConnect round 2. So now publicly, everybody is in the same boat as we are. We're working hard for it. We're going to put forth the best application we can, and we have high hopes, and it will be enormous help for our area if we are successful in ReConnect round 2. The large majority of areas that were not included in ReConnect round 1 will be included in round 2. Mm-hmm. There'll still be some out there that just won't fit this round, but the large majority will.
And so I guess we need to be clear here. It's not a foregone conclusion that Strata will be awarded in round 2. We're applying with the hope and intent that we would potentially be also, or again, awarded an additional amount that would help us build to more locations.
Yeah, I definitely want everyone to know that Strata is doing everything possible to try to improve our chances of getting additional funding to get out to these more high cost areas.
So a couple of critical questions that come up, because it's natural for us to look at this map and say, oh, I'm not in one of these areas. I'm a little frustrated with my internet speed today. Why should I be happy about, the folks that are in this highlighted area that are going to get the service? How does this benefit me if I'm not actually in one of these areas where fiber will be deployed? Yeah,
that's a good question, especially if, as you go to that landing page, stratanetworks.com/reconnect, and you'll see how chopped up the areas are. They're funny shaped. They're to anyone else, it probably doesn't make much sense. But the bottom line is, that's how it looks, where the areas that don't get 10 meg. And some people might have been carved right out of it. You can see that the ReConnect area just carves right around you, and that can be frustrating. But one thing that a lot of people need to understand is this funding, yes, it benefits these areas that were awarded, but we need to take fiber to those areas. So we're going to be bringing fiber and passing a lot of homes that are outside of those ReConnect areas. So there's some indirect benefits that are major that'll bring fiber to the front door, the front yard of a lot of these homes that weren't in ReConnect. So that's one group of people. Another group is, just you're not near a ReConnect area and you weren't awarded. Strata is continuing, as we have been, fiber overbuilding. We're building fiber out to these areas, so be confident Strata will continue to build. This ReConnect is just on top of that, and we'll be building out continually.
So what you're saying, once again, important probably to emphasize is, if I heard you correctly, you're saying Strata is not going to now just focus on building these ReConnect areas and put aside or put on the back burner the fiber builds that they've been doing the last several years. You're saying these ReConnect areas will be in addition to the current workload that Strata's managed.
This is a major acceleration, is what it is. I guess one way to put it is that Strata has been cash flowing the fiber overbuilds for the last several years, just doing the best we can with the cash flow that we can generate, and which is great, but it does, it is what it is. It's as much as we could do. And which is a lot. It really is a lot. I look around through the country and see what other telecom companies are doing, and I'm proud of what Strata's doing for sure. But we've got limitations. It's expensive. It's very costly, and so we will continue doing that. And this ReConnect has been a tremendous boost and it's going to be on top of and accelerate what we're already doing.
And once again, to probably state this in more manageable terms, Strata's been targeting 1,000 new locations a year, which I think you mentioned previously, 1,000 new fiber locations per year. And with this ReConnect award, that number is going to be pushed up to the 1,500 to 1,600 locations per year.
Exactly.
Strata has or will accept a commitment to build to these additional 3,000 locations over the next 5 years. So once again, important to emphasize that Strata's not replacing its workload with this ReConnect program obligation. We're just accelerating, as you said. We're going to get more locations that much quicker. Great. Okay, so when are you going to get started building?
Well, I'll tell you, Strata is chomping at the bit. We want to get going. Right now, I'll tell you where we're at right now is basically we know we got offered this loan grant. There's still a lot of steps that need to happen. There's agreements that need to be signed. Keep in mind that, it's great that Strata got over $11 million in grant, but Strata also got over $11 million loan that we need to repay. So there's some significant financial work that we need to do to satisfy USDA's requirements. On top of that, there's environmental work. This is federal funding. Federal funds require environmental work. We are moving through this as quickly as we can. It's going to take some time. And right now, I can't say exactly when it's going to happen. I'm hoping this summer is what I'm hoping for. There's just still quite a lot.
I know there's several of the Strata employees that are going to be participating in a training in the next few weeks that will be bringing in different companies that have been awarded funds through this program. And I'm sure you'll get more answers to questions there. And as we have more information, we'll be supplying that to Strata customers, correct?
We are taking a ton of questions to this USDA workshop that they're providing to the awarded companies. And we hope to get a lot of answers and better timelines. And yes, we'll be giving more and more information out. I'm assuming this landing page will be a good place to give more and more information out to the public.
So great. Yeah. So one last question before I get to that. I think we want to emphasize to the listeners, there's a lot to this conversation. And if there's elements of this conversation that we have not addressed, we would definitely invite you to send us an email, question, comment on this post. Let us know if there's additional information that we can try to respond to. You can send us an email at podcast@stratanetworks.com or like I said, comment on this post, and we'd be happy to try to provide additional information. So last question. When Strata provides a fiber connection to a home or business in the Uintah Basin with speeds of up to 1,000 megabits per second or a gigabit per second is another similar term, how is it different than a Google fiber connection that is so highly lauded and celebrated in places like Salt Lake and Provo and other locations? How's it different? Or is it different?
Well, I don't want to say it's the same. I would say it's better. STRATA Networks, we provide even more. Everybody gets excited about Google Fiber, and it's great. They're taking fiber in. Strata is going the extra mile into the home. Basically, I would say most companies will take fiber to the home, and then from there, it's yours. You take care of it. And so I don't want to say we're the same. I would say Strata goes the extra mile because, the large majority of customers have this fiber and they're not sure how to set it up, how to hook it up. And so that's where I would say Strata is different.
Well, going the extra mile, both literally and figuratively, correct?
Exactly.
So it's vastly different to provide a fiber connection in a place like Provo or Salt Lake with very densely clustered homes and businesses in contrast to places like Tabiona or Altamont or Neola or even Roosevelt or Vernal as a comparison. They're not the same. And so I think your statement's pretty accurate. Strata does go the extra mile, both literally and figuratively. So appreciate that. We're going to transition here to Dusty for just a minute. He's been sitting over here patiently and quietly. He's just thinking about the chores that need to be done back on the ranch, right, Dusty? Did you get up early this morning to get everything done so you could join us on the podcast?
I'm sure they'll be there waiting for me when I get home.
Yeah, Dusty and his wife were gracious enough to host us for this event, and this USDA announcement. When we received word from USDA that we would be receiving the award, they asked us to identify a farm in the Uintah Basin that would be one of the benefiting locations from this program. And Dusty, your name came to the top of the list immediately. You happen to be in one of those areas, and we've known you for many years. You've been a great, loyal customer of STRATA Networks. In fact, you used to work for the organization. What's it been, 10 plus years ago now?
Yeah, it's been probably about 10 years. I was employed by him for probably 7-8 years. So
yeah, so
good relationship.
We reached out to Dusty, asked him if he'd be willing to host us, and at the time we were asked to keep it somewhat confidential, so I couldn't tell him a lot, and just said, hey, can we have an event at your place and bring a bunch of people from DC in? And you know, Dusty's a great guy. He said, absolutely. What do you need me to do? So maybe tell us a little bit about your experience of hosting that event and what it was like, and we appreciate your willingness. But yeah, give us a little background.
Well, thank you. It was a good time because things needed to remain confidential for a little bit. There were some surprises out there for us, but as the process went on, I mean, we worked with your crews, your personal crews and whatnot to obviously get things cleaned up. I usually don't keep the barn that clean, but so
your barn is very clean for a ranch barn, that's for sure. People can see that in the video, that's for sure.
Well, it looked good when we were done. But it was great to have the USDA out there and DJ Lavoie coming out and Mr. Parker with the USDA. They were very gracious to us, very kind, very thoughtful. The crew of the USDA, Jamie, and was very good to my family and went through a lot of different things. And even since the event has been over, they've reached out and sent us cards and a couple of small gifts. So we had a good time, got through some of the unknowns and was able to relax a little bit, but I felt like things went well, and hopefully it met the goals that they had.
Oh, it went fantastic. Like I said, Dusty was a fantastic host, and he's got a beautiful setting up there in I guess White Rocks, Hayden, Neola area. Beautiful ranch, but it is a location that's actually quite a ways from our serving nodes. It's in a location that's difficult to serve when you're talking broadband. I know over the years that you and your family have leveraged broadband probably to its limits in terms of what STRATA can provide. Maybe talk just a little bit about how your family uses broadband, and it's probably going to, for most of our consumers, it's probably going to sound pretty typical, but talk a little bit about how you guys use broadband and maybe some of the limitations that you've seen with your service over the last few years where you've kind of been held back by what STRATA can't deliver.
Yeah, we do live at the end of the row where I live, and it's quite a ways away from almost anything. And for years, our options were through the satellite internet. Losing my mind through the satellite internet, and there were obviously problems with that, and it was better than no internet by far. And then to have it run through the copper lines and over DSL and stuff like that, that was a big upgrade for us. But we even where we are, we live at the end of the copper line and a long ways away, and so to be able to have something like this come in is going to be great, and to be able to use the grant and the loan and whatnot. I mean, I come from the construction industry, and it is not free to put the infrastructure in to provide customers with something like this. And we use it a lot for, we have some children at home doing homeschool, and not only homeschool, but even for homework for those who are attending public schools and things like that. And my wife uses it to even to grocery shop and to do a lot of the shopping because of distance. I mean, where I live, you don't forget bread and milk. It's a long ways back to town to get that.
You're 30 minutes no matter which way you go to get another load of milk, right?
Yeah, no matter where you go, it's a great distance. So things like that, and even for the business, but almost more for a personal use. That this is going to be great, and a great addition to us, and we use it quite a bit.
Dusty's pretty modest, but I know a little bit about his situation. He's got a high school sophomore, correct?
Yep.
He's got a high school sophomore that I guess he decided he's not that interested in ranching, right?
Yeah, he's much smarter than I am.
But and you fill in the holes here that I'm going to leave. But it sounds like he got interested in currency trading online, correct?
Yep.
And so he went through a program over the course of several weeks to become certified as a online currency trader. Is that correct?
Yep, that is correct. He and my wife now. My wife also does that and participates with him. And
so they're actively doing that today. They're doing currency trading. That's
cool.
And
in a situation with currency trading, just fast and quick speeds on the internet and whatnot are very crucial, because some of that stuff happens just in split seconds when you have to make decisions and things like that. So
absolutely
important.
So another thing he didn't mention is his wife, Carol, is an absolute fitness and health guru and nut, right? And she runs a little, I can't even really say little, but she runs a spin cycling and health class out of the backside of your I can't even really call it a barn.
It's
your
a barn.
Shop. It's not a barn. It's a beautiful barn, but yeah. So she has 2 or 3 classes a day, 5 or 6 days a week, where she's running a spin class, and has 10 or 12 different folks that show up to every class and participates in that. And I'm sure that you're using internet to run that business to a certain degree, correct?
Yeah, for sure. And even continuing education for her, she loves health, she loves fitness, she's certified in that now. So to continue her knowledge in that, she's always on the internet reading up on and studying different aspects of that, and to run her, to do the spin classes and things, reaching out to some of those customers. It's a big use. When we sit down, and sometimes we think we don't use the internet, but when we really sit down and maybe go through a normal day, and we use it a lot.
Oh yeah.
We use it a lot more than we think we do.
Right. We rely on it. So, and this might be a bit of a hard question because you don't know yet, but how do you see things changing when you get fiber to your home and have basically access to unlimited bandwidth? What are you going to do with it? Got some exciting plans? I know you mentioned putting cameras out in the barn to help you with calving and a number of other things. What other ideas have you had, or what are you considering?
Those are going to be some of the main ones, and now that we know that it's coming and that it's going to be an option, we can even explore more of those options. But there are a lot of different things that you can do, either because we live in such a remote area. I mean, we worry about security sometimes, and I mean, no one's around to report anything if we're out of town and gone. And so we have we've experimented a little bit with just security cameras, and they're run through the internet. We can watch on our phones what's going on at home when we're gone, and then also even in like cameras in the barn, or in watching cows calve, or livestock, or predators even around some of the animals and stuff like that. We'll be able to view that, and it'll be more reliable than what we currently have. And
yeah, it definitely will. Yeah, fiber is an upgrade on copper for sure. Well, I think it's been a great conversation, gentlemen. I appreciate you guys weighing in. To summarize, it's $23.6 million that's been given to the Uintah Basin as a grant and loan to provide fiber to some of the most high-cost locations in the basin that STRATA's serving, and 3,000 locations are going to benefit from it. And to Jon's points, once again, to emphasize, this is not going to supplant or replace STRATA's current work. It's going to accelerate it and be on top of the current workload of 1,000 new fiber locations per year. So just great news for the Uintah Basin. There very well may be some additional questions that listeners have, and we would once again encourage you to drop us an email or comment on this post, and we'd be happy to try to address those in a future podcast or in the post. So anything you two gentlemen would like to add before we wrap this up?
Well, I think we can't emphasize enough how big a deal this is. This is huge. These areas, for me in the engineering group at Strata, we look at these areas and we wonder, how in the world are we ever going to do this? The costs are way too high, and to actually have a pathway to get this done is a huge relief, and it's exciting, and we can't get started fast enough.
Yep, absolutely. And additional details to come after you attend your USDA.
Yeah, I wish we had more. We've got a lot of questions that we have, and we wish we had more information. But right now, we're just trying to go through all of that, and once we get final word that we can go, we're going to go.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right, we want to thank the listeners. This first time maiden voyage on our STRATA Networks Behind the Connection podcast. We plan to do a few more of these, so we'd love to have your feedback on what topics you'd like us to discuss. And once again, if you have questions pertaining to the ReConnect program, the locations that will be served, or anything we haven't covered today, drop us a comment or shoot us an email at podcast@stratanetworks.com. And once again, thanks for listening.